Hi everyone, and welcome to the AhReWriter channel. My name is Ari, and today we're going to be talking about my computers. I've actually got two of them, and the first one is about 8 years old. As you can see on screen, it is this beautiful computer that I custom built about 8 years ago. The parts list is actually right here, so you guys can see the list and see how it's going to differ from my new computer that I built many months ago. This computer has served me so well. It still works to this day. It's stuck on Windows 10 due to its hardware, and it can't really get to Windows 11 because it's missing some key components that I'm not really willing to upgrade and my motherboard can't handle. So it's been a great computer. It can play a lot of games. I did try to play God of War, the 2018 version on it, and I think that it saw the intro on low graphics and then it just started to crash as soon as gameplay started. So it didn't really quite work with that game, but it does play a lot of the other games really well. I used to play Hades on it, and I've played a lot of MMOs on it, and I've also played different kinds of online games that are maybe FPSs, things like Overwatch, etc., etc. So it's a really nice computer, and I have it as a backup on standby, but I basically needed something more powerful. I wanted to create renders a little bit faster. I actually make renders with programs like AutoCAD Architecture, and I want to learn how to use one called 3ds Max. So I am a draftsman. I also do make renders. Renders are essentially digitized photos, so I'm able to place materials in different colors and things like trees and different assets on an actual drawing and then turn it into this beautiful photo so that you can see what your house would look like after creating it. So my old computer could make these renders. It would just take a really long time, and the processing was sometimes hours. I would say half a day, if not longer, it would take for a nice high quality render to be created. So every time I would need to do a test render, it would take me at least half an hour to an hour to really see it without seeing too many pixels. So my old computer is on standby, and here I just want to talk to you guys about my new computer. I'm really excited about it. I built it relatively recently-ish. It was basically made in 2023, I believe in around April. And you guys can see all the parts that I got here for it. I did a ton of research for about 3 weeks. I was researching and looking up some data online, seeing what people were making. And I was actually inspired by a guy who builds computers. And I'll talk about him right now. Christopher Flanagan. You guys can check out his YouTube channel, and he's made many different kinds of PCs with different kinds of parts, and he actually made one that's a little bit similar to mine. He was the one who inspired me to get my exact PC case, the Montex Sky 2. So it's a really gorgeous PC case. It has this unique addition that it has fans on the back instead of just fans on the front and fans in the actual rear. So when I say back, I mean typically where the cabling is. So there's actually fans next to the cables. And the main reason why I got this case is because the latch on the back, the actual door in the back that secures all of your cables, is held in by 2 thumb screws that you can easily unscrew with your thumbs, but they're very secure once they're in. And a lot of the newer cases that are developed, especially back about 6 months ago, they basically had these magnetic latches, and if you had your too many cables, they basically would sometimes push the latches open. And so there would be no real way to secure these cables and ensure that that back panel never opened. So the Montex Sky 2 is one of the few cases that has this, and did a lot of research on it, and it really works well. I'm actually using the exact same graphics card that Christopher used in one of his builds, the Zotac Gaming GeForce RTX 4080. It is a gorgeous graphics card, looks very different from most of the other ones, and I went with a 4080 because I wanted to save over $600 on getting a 4090, which I believe is kind of a ripoff, and the 4080 is quite powerful. In all the tests that I've seen, it's quite close to the 4090 and much more powerful than the AMD comparisons. So AMD and NVIDIA basically have a bit of a war on graphics cards. They're competing with each other. And the AMD ones, I heard that they had coil whine and that they basically overheated a lot and had issues. And I think GTX, when it comes to graphics cards, is a little bit more stable and more compatible with most things. So I decided to opt for it. And I did some things a little bit differently. I was recommended to get a different kind of CPU cooling system. So basically, I'm using deep cools liquid cooling system, the LS720WH. So it's really nice. It wasn't too expensive either. It didn't break the bank, and the installation wasn't too bad. It's solid. It works. I've felt my PC while playing games and checked the temperatures during rendering and during games, and it doesn't really get hot at all. I actually have 3 intake fans, the 2 in the back where the cables are, 1 at the bottom, and then I have 4 outtake fans, 1 that came with the computer in the rear, and 3 at the top that are basically part of the radiator of the liquid cooling system. Now, I did some research on that, and they say that you want to have either an equal amount of intake and outtake, or more intake than outtake. And I didn't really have a chance to do that. I technically have space for 1 more fan at the bottom, but I didn't get one. I wanted to do some tests and see what it was like without that fan. And it works quite nice. I think that I'm actually getting rid of a lot of hot air, and I'm inputting enough cool air that everything works great, and I haven't had any issues so far in over 6 months that I've had this beautiful machine. So I did opt for a very interesting motherboard, the MAG Z790 Tomahawk Wi-Fi. This was the hardest part of my PC build. Definitely the hardest thing that I had to make a choice on, because so many other motherboards existed and they're expensive. I mean, some of the good ones that have enough USB 3.0 inputs and USB Type-C inputs, and that had a special metal cover that protects them instead of just being open to the elements and just using whatever, the PC case has as a cover, so to speak. They were so expensive, and I didn't really want to break the bank. So finally, I did some research and I found this one. This one, the Z790 Tomahawk Wi-Fi, is really, really nice. It looks great. It has all the inputs that I need. It wasn't too expensive. It was middle of the line, so I saved some money. I probably saved at least $200 to $300 if I had gone for the motherboard of choice if I was rich. And it's fantastic. I'm using a really nice CPU as well. The CPU is very important. It's the i7-13700K. The K allows for overclocking, but listen to this. Overclocking, not only is it overrated, as I've seen in a lot of research that I've done, but it didn't really work for me. It blue screened my computer several times. My computer just couldn't handle it. And so I stopped overclocking, went back to normal settings. I've had no issues. Everything runs fine. I haven't had anything that runs slow or anything like that. Although iTunes takes 10 minutes to open. I think that's an Mac to Windows thing, so we can talk to iTunes about that, and that's why they have such low ratings on the Windows Store for iTunes itself. Very sad. But besides that, everything runs well. I've been able to run all kinds of graphic intensive games, and my drafting software, BIM software. BIM stands for Building Information Modeling, so Revit is one of those programs that I use that is a BIM program. And rendering works pretty fine on this device. It definitely does get hotter, but the cooling that I have combined with the fans and the liquid cooling system right on top of the CPU works quite nicely. And then when it comes to RAM, I learned the hard way that you can't just get 2 sets of the same RAM and put them in. If you're going to get 4 sticks of RAM, they all have to be part of the same purchase, of the same bundle, because they are a little bit different from each other if you get 2 of the same set from the same manufacturer and the same seller, for example. So you definitely don't want to do that. RAM was giving me issues, so instead of having 128 gigabytes of RAM, I opted for 64 gigabytes, and some motherboards actually only are able to do dual channel RAM. This motherboard is one of them, so that means only 2 sticks of RAM basically work. Each one is 32 gigabytes, so I'm quite happy with it. I don't think I'm going to be exceeding the 64 gigabytes of RAM that I currently have. And if I do, well, I'll have to sell what I've got and get a pack of 4. The problem is that when you do that, your actual RAM speeds decrease as well. So right now, I think that my RAM is running at about 7,000 hertz. I believe that's the number there. So they're running quite nicely. They're very, very nice. But yeah, the Trident Z5 RGB. I'm not a big fan of RGB, but for this device, I keep it simple, and I like the fact that basically I have an internal flashlight at all times. So I keep my fans white. I tried to make them orange, but apparently my motherboard and the MSI software that comes with it doesn't really understand what orange is, and could be my computer case as well. So whenever I set it to orange, it makes it like a peach or like a white, so, or red, which I don't like on my PC. So basically I had this white aesthetic surrounding the black interior and beautiful colors from the graphics card and the RAM. You'll see me looking in this direction a couple of times because I'm looking at my computer right now while I talk, and I'm quite happy with it. Cable management was tough. I managed to make it look decent in the front, and in the back I tried to spread them out as much as I could. This case is a little tight with cables, but it all worked, it all fits, and nothing is bulging out too badly. Everything turned out nicely. I'm using some very nice storage devices. The NVMe storage is now the new thing instead of using the old SSDs. I do have SSDs on my actual old 8-year-old computer, and they work great. And I actually have a portable SSD that I use as my storage backup just in case. But these NVMEs are wonderful. They're by WD_black. They're the SN770 version. So quite powerful, quite fast, not top of the line, but apparently according to my research, a lot of people were saying not to worry too much about that because basically the NVMEs were a lot newer than a lot of the motherboards that were currently out at the time. So it didn't really matter which one you got, they would basically run at very similar speeds. And of course, eventually, after you read and write too many times, they'll have to be replaced. So I definitely am not too concerned about that. I have 2 of them, each one is 2 terabytes, and I have room for more. I believe this motherboard holds 4 total, so I've got 2 more slots that I can see that are easily accessible right below my graphics card. So I can just take my screwdrivers, unscrew them, put a couple of them in, and I have a lot of storage if I need it. So, and I still haven't exceeded the 4 terabytes that I have total of storage, so I'm doing quite well with that. And yeah, I think I've talked about most of the graphical components, but hopefully throughout me talking about the PC, you guys have been seeing little snippets of me building it. I recorded myself building the entire PC from scratch, so I show how all the parts work. I go over my troubles and tribulations with building it too. It wasn't that bad. It's mostly me being a novice builder. I've only built one other PC 8 years ago, so, you know, my first one that I showed you guys earlier and talked about earlier. So that one basically, it had been a while, and I basically learned a lot when I did this build. For example, putting the liquid cooling system on a little too soon, and then you can't really fit certain kinds of parts as well. So learned that the hard way, but luckily everything turned out fine, and I got all of the stuff that required thermal paste and things like that to be done the first time really nicely. Do a lot of research before you guys do this, and watch some PC builds if you guys are interested in building your own PC. Hopefully you guys get inspired, and it's not so bad. Like I said, I'm not the greatest at building PCs, but mine turned out really, really nice. Didn't break anything, didn't have to return anything either, so I didn't lose any money. I did return the extra 2 sticks of RAM. I basically got them back, full refund, so that's great. I just have my other 2 sitting in there. Make sure that you look at what slots they go into. This motherboard, you put them in slots 2 and 4. Let me make sure about that. Yep, the 2nd from the left and the 4th from the left. So if you're starting from the right, it would be the 1st from the right and the 3rd from the right. So there's little tags that tell you where they go on each motherboard, and for this one, that's where they go. So I didn't put them in the 1st or 3rd slot or anything, you know, without looking at the tags and doing proper research. No. I didn't blue screen my computer, you know, by doing it the wrong way or anything. Wink. But yeah, lots of fun. Where all the cables go is the toughest part, but you guys can look at other PC builds with either a similar motherboard or the same one, and you guys can see where they all go. And in my little tutorial here, I basically go over where they go, so you guys can see exactly which cable goes where, and a lot of the builds kind of skim over it. So luckily, I got them all done in the first try, and it all worked out. I was quite happy with it. Really is a beautiful little machine, and I've been able to do so much. What I do recommend as well is with a graphics card, mine luckily came with this beautiful magnetic stand. I'll actually show it to you guys in some of the clips that I have here. This magnetic stand is really, really cool because it allows me to stabilize it in its weakest part. So the funny thing with graphics cards is they weren't as heavy as they are now, and you could basically get away with plugging them into the motherboard and screwing them into the back rear end of the computer. And that's it. And then the front end would kind of just sag down a little bit. So graphics card sag is the thing that's been talked about in the PC building community. And luckily mine doesn't have any of that issue, and it's not going to eventually, you know, tear over time and get worse and worse, and one day I'll be doing something and maybe, you know, will have a little bit of a shaking movement here, and then the graphics card will just pop right off. That would be a horrible disaster on the most expensive component of my computer, the graphics card. The processor was not even close. So this lovely little stand really props it up nicely. I can adjust where it goes. It's magnetic, so it doesn't have to stay exactly where it is. I can move it around anywhere. And I just have it basically on the front right corner of it. So basically there's support everywhere that there needs to be support for this gorgeous graphics card, and the computer is quite stable. And I'm quite happy with it. But yes, please let me know if you guys have any questions about building a PC. This is my PC. I'm very happy with it. Airflow is amazing. And the beautiful thing about the Montech Sky 2 case is that the bottom area is basically hollow and open. So if I need more storage, no problem whatsoever. I've even got room for SSDs to be mounted on the back where the cables are. So those are easy screws that you can basically screw in an SSD right there. SSDs I'll try to avoid unless I need them, but if I need to plug one in, I've got the output cable ready on the back end of my PC and I'm ready to go. So it's a gorgeous device. I've been using it for streaming, I've been using it for playing, multitasking about, I don't know, 5 to 10 different kinds of programs and things at the same time. Not really had any issues. And I've noticed that the CPU has not really been taxed too much, only while rendering, of course. Whenever you render anything, your CPU has to be at its max. It's just a rendering thing, especially if you're using a program that like AutoCAD Architecture, which is a bit older, and I believe it only uses 1 core of your CPU, and I have so many with the i7. Do you need a more powerful CPU than mine? I don't think so. I think that when it comes to CPUs, I think that the i7 is good enough. There is the i9, which is the next step. And then, of course, there's Xeon CPUs and CPUs that are meant for workstations. If you're building a PC and you do want to game with it, don't get anything that has to do with workstations. There are actually graphics cards that are not just $1,100. I believe mine was around that price. Or $1,700, like the 4090 graphics cards, at least back 6 months ago. But there are graphics cards that cost $4,000 to $5,000, if not more. And they're meant for graphic design. And you would think, oh, it should really work for gaming. Apparently, no. The RTX variant of graphics cards has ray tracing and is really, really good for games and will give you that performance while also helping stabilize your graphics, while the other graphics cards are more for processing tons of heavy data in things like Photoshop or different kinds of 3D programs, such as maybe, creating video games with Unity. Even then, I think that my graphics card, according to my research, can handle all of that. So I think it's quite a nice one. And yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. Hopefully you guys enjoyed seeing the build being built while I was talking about it and all the little details involved. And I have so much footage that I basically have for the PC. I mean, I believe it's, if I look at the raw data, I have over 4 hours of footage combined in many, many little clips and snippets. So I'm kind of talking a lot because I'm going to have to combine it into a 15-minute video, aren't I? Because we're at 15 minutes right now. So anyway, just wanted to talk about my computer. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. If you have any questions, please let me know. And I'll have the full specs on screen periodically as I'm talking about them. There were 2 things that I remembered while I was recording the initial recording. One of them is the really cool aspect of my RAM and the motherboard itself is that my motherboard by MSI has a really cool thing called the MSI Center, and in it, it basically has the Mystic colors, I believe. I'm going to look at it now and see what exactly it's called. But basically, it allows me to check my CPU temperature by looking at the color of my RAM sticks. You could also do it for the entire PC itself, but then it would be flashing colors too often. So I keep the whole PC as is. Just the nice white aesthetic from the lights, like a flashlight kind of. And then the RAM itself, like I said, will change colors depending on the temperature that your CPU is going through. So it's a nice connection between the motherboard, CPU, and the RAM. And it's cool. I believe I have it set to green, blue, and then red. So from cold to hot, of course. The second thing is, just wanted to say thanks again to Christopher Flanagan. I really was inspired by him, and he really helped a lot with my PC build. So once again, go check him out, guys. I really recommend it. He's a great creator, really straight to the point, easy to listen to and understand, very professional. So cheers to Christopher, and hope you guys have a great one. Ciao.